I want to start off with a little story about New York City. Most of you are New Yorkers, correct? Yeah. Okay. It's a story about an old man. He's been working for a corporation for, I don't know, 60 years. And it's about time he has to retire. And his boss comes up to him and he says, "Sal, look, you've got to retire." So he says, "I understand." So lunchtime, he opens his desk and he starts clearing out things, putting them in a box. And he sees a little stub. What the heck is that? It says, so-and-so's or Schwartz's shoemaker, 1944. He said, "What the heck? I wonder if they're still open," he's thinking to himself. So at lunchtime, he walks up a block north, 2 blocks south. There it is, a little tiny shop wedged between all these corporate buildings. A little tiny shop. He walks in, ping, the bell goes off over the door. You remember the old days. Maybe not you young people, but the bell goes off over the door. And behind the counter is an old man just like himself with a shoemaker's apron on. So he walks up to the old man and he gives him the ticket. The old man looks at it and says, "Just a minute." Walks in the back. 5 minutes later he comes out, he hands it back to him, he goes, "They'll be ready Thursday." New York City. Well, I want to thank you all, especially this notorious group right here, for coming. I haven't seen them in years, but I worked with them for 20 years. This guy I've known for 40 years, and he's still here. The one thing I've always said about Jay is that he's a better human being than he is a photographer, and that's saying a lot. So, anyway, let's look at some of this stuff. Taken in Italy, I was in my car. I had one lens available on the thing. I just picked it up and shot. Had I been out on the street, I might have approached it differently. See why you have to carry your camera with you all the time? All the time. Tony's got his, Jay's got his, Chuck doesn't have his. I got it. Do you? Okay. Well, where's that fellow that came in with the 80 to 200 zoom? Nice. Nice. I hope you forget that. Because I can use that. You know, you're walking around the streets in New York City. New York City's a theater. Think of it as a theater. You know, there's a wonderful line by Laurence Olivier, the great English actor. He was talking about the Italians. He said, there are 50 million actors in Italy, and the worst ones are on the stage. And the same thing can be applied to New York City, you know, with its ethnic groups. Now these guys they can be Italians, they could be Greeks, they could be Turks, they could be anything. Who the hell cares? Back in the old days when I was desperately poor, now I'm only moderately poor, but in the old days when I was desperately poor, I had a Volkswagen Beetle, and the heat never went off. Summer, winter, never ever went off. And here I am, it's a mild rainy day, and I'm stalled in traffic outside of MoMA, and the whole car is it's like in a steam bath. And I'm really grumpy, and I'm going, God, what the hell? And I look out the side window, and there's this impressionistic painting moving in front of me, backwards and forwards. Now, I'm using a Leica, and the difficulty there was trying to focus. The Canon would have been easier, and it was tough. So I really had to guess at how many feet these people were away, because I'm shooting wide open. I'm shooting at 2.8. At probably 125 or 250 at the most, I doubt it. And I'm pushing the film to 1600, and there it is. Same thing here. I was playing rugby while I was living in England, and the pitch got so fogged out they called the game. You couldn't see. So these little English schoolboys took over the pitch and started to play a little soccer match. So I grabbed my camera and went in the middle of the match. That's what I love doing. I don't know if you can do this, but with my kids, I used to go in all their games. I never stood on the sidelines. I would always go in the middle of their games, you know, and they were pretty good about it for the most part. They said, well, you're going to get hit, you're going to get knocked over. I said, you know, I played my share of football. I get hit, I get hit. You know, I know how to roll, and hit me if you have to. So I went in that, and obviously, remember before when I was saying to that young lady, the pictures are more physical when you're up close. Again, shooting from the car. I come in from Jersey, so I'm always in the car. And here I am stuck in traffic, and here's this poor old woman, you know, and it tells a story all by itself. I don't have to explain what's in that photograph. One of the things that intrigues me is shapes and abstractions. So I followed this woman for a while until I realized I was shooting the wrong thing. I should have been pointing the camera down instead of straight at her. Ralph Gibson used to do this a lot. And, you know, it's just minimalist proportions. All you see are the two hands. Again, I told you I like shapes and abstractions. This was the residue left in a frying pan. And my next door neighbor is a caterer. And I have no idea what it is. It's a Rorschach, so you can figure out what the hell it is for yourself. I just like the shapes and shadows of it. Remember when you were a kid and the coach who knew nothing about baseball, first thing he said to you was, keep your eye on the ball. I never understood what the hell that meant, keep your eye on the ball. You know, you're 6 or 7 years old, and you go, what does that mean? You know, it's such a complicated thought. This kid kept his eye on the ball. He missed it by a mile, but he hit the thing it was standing on. Now, this I'm really proud of. I love this. I took it at the Mermaids Parade, and it's this much of the negative, or the whatever. This much of the frame, just one little quarter. I was about to throw it away. I was about to delete it, and I said, no, wait a second. This, and then you have to go back into your subconscious. This is Matisse's dancers, or that type of shape that he had in his dance. So I just cropped the hell out of it, and for whatever it's worth, there it is. Same thing here. You've got a leaf, and behind it, for me, again, it's a Rorschach, is this primordial monster, this beast. Now, my son just graduated from Tisch at NYU, honors graduate by, I told Chuck that, and he's making movies. So this young kid he meets in the streets in New York, and they're talking. He's from New Orleans, and he's a soul singer. And he said he wanted to make a music video. My son didn't miss a beat. He says, I'll do it. You know, never thinking what the heck this was going to cost. So make a long story short, he put out a Kickstarter. Anybody know what a Kickstarter is? No, nobody. You're all too old. This is new. This is what kids do when they have a project and they need funding for the project. They go on the internet and say, I'm doing such and such, I need your help. $5, $10, $100, whatever you want to contribute. Even if you don't want to contribute, I appreciate your interest. That's it. So Anthony managed to get $1,500, mostly from my sister, but he did get a lot. My cousin Jody as well, he threw in a big chunk of change. So Anthony got this amount of money. And Matt Firpo was a good friend of Anthony's, is a cinematographer. He did it for nothing. And 2 or 3 other people from NYU, they all chipped in their services. What happens with these kids is once the word gets out that somebody's doing something, they all volunteer. Because up till now, they've been deluged with theory, you know, and watching movies. Now they're involved in a movie. And that's where they get their experience. And they can also write on their resume, you know, I worked as a grip or a lighting director or whatever, etc. So Anthony directed this. His friend Paul Bogosian was one of the producers. Matt Firpo, cinematographer. The other gentleman with the Steadicam gave Anthony a big break on his fee. This guy's you know, one of the top guys in the business. And Anthony made this very, very nice video. They shot it in a school in New Jersey that gave them the auditorium for no price. They shot it in a bar in Manhattan and a rooftop in Brooklyn. Different locations, and put it together. It's on the website under Greg Banks Authentic Video, and it's directed by Anthony DiGiacomo. A good kid. The only problem is he's using all my Canons to shoot a lot of these things, because the Canon 5D Mark II and III you can shoot videos with. Okay. He uses a Holga. Yeah. That's a Holga. You know, you do it once in a while just to play. This was in Paris of my 2 kids, my daughter Nikki and son Anthony. Who is it? Einstein said there's nothing more beautiful than a mystery. Who knows what's going on here? I mean, I can tell you what's going on here because I was there. But I don't want to tell you. I want you to figure out what's going on. You know, because this way I involve the viewer. And isn't that what all art is about, is involving the viewer? Caravaggio, Michelangelo Caravaggio, the great Italian painter, once said that he was acutely aware that someone would be looking at his paintings. And I'm sure Jay feels the same way, you know, when he does a 30 by 40 image. It's not just for Jay. He's going to involve people to look at these things. Seems like an ordinary picture, but what I like most about it is that I used to beg my son that when he goes to school, bring a camera with you. Dad, you do stills, I do films. Okay, so I'd beg him until he got to the point where he says, okay, I've had enough, I'll do it. Goes into Manhattan. He sees the 2 signs up there on the metal plaques and the love written there. So he recognizes the situation. He goes, boy, that really is interesting, but it's not enough. So he stood there patiently and he waited until the right thing happened. You know, 4 or 5 people passed by and nothing. Then this woman passes by with a mink coat and a cigarette, and he took the picture. This is one of David Shapiro's productions. It's called Bat Mitzvah Confidential. And at one point, David says, quiet, this is a take. And I'm going, oh no. I really wanted to take this photograph. Desperately wanted this photograph. But I know I can't fire this thing because it's going to sound. And he's going to hear it, and then it's going to mess up the production. So what I did was I took up my backup camera. Taken with, you know, a little tiny camera like this. David loved it, puts it on the internet. You know, we're in New York City. This is the greatest city in the world. This and Paris for reflections in windows, because the backgrounds are always so interesting. Now, I think most of you realize if you've done any sports, if you watch guys like Neil Leifer and Walter Yost, you know, some of the great sports photographers, Kenny Regan, unfortunately, who just passed away, was a great, great old friend. We break the rules. We have to break the rules because, you know, if you're a news reporter or a sports reporter, you know, the news may be somewhere else and you're not allowed to go there, you got to go there. And Billy asked that myself and a woman be the only two photographers allowed on center court when she was being named, she was having the stadium named after her. And I was told by security, you have to stand right here, you can't move anywhere else. Okay. So for 90% of the time that was fine, until Billy decided on her own to run up and down by the stands and just give everybody high fives. So I said, well, that's it. I said, I got to follow Billy. I said, I'm going after her. And I went after her, and, you know, with the 28mm lens, you know, instead of the long lens, and this is why I like these wide-angle lenses, there's a greater physical presence. You know, your hand could be right here because of that, the wide-angle lens. Now, this is one of the first pictures I ever took down in the Bowery, 1970. And, you know, the whole story is in the gestures, in the hands. One is pleading, the other is rejecting. This is the cover of Jay's book, by the way. Jay has two books, one that he did and one that I did. And it said, Jay Mazel's New York, almost. And this was the cover of it. I don't do much fashion, occasionally, but so when I get a situation where I have to sit somebody down and pose them, I don't like it. I'm uncomfortable doing it. And I found out a trick that when this little boy was sitting there, I was shooting him head on, and I'm trying to get some kind of reaction out of him. And he's not a professional model, he's a little boy. So what I did was I said, all right, just a minute, I have to change film. And I'm not changing film. I'm making believe I'm changing film, and I'm watching him. He went into this repose, and I said, that's the photo. And I just turned real quickly and shot that. I'll go back to that, sorry. Now, these are things, this is serendipity. You know, you can't plan this. You know, I knew the two girls were there, I knew the guy was there, the pigeon was there, but the way they shifted their eyes was beautiful. They didn't turn their heads, they just moved their eyes, you know, because they were a bit leery of this boy. I'll tell you, I mentioned this in the last talk that I gave here. This is a little village down in Antigua in the West Indies. And I went down there 35 years ago with Vita Scarolitis and Gene Mayer to photograph a tennis tournament. They were playing in it, I was photographing it. But I was intrigued with the little ball boys and the ball girls. They were all very interesting, very beautiful children. And I said, I wonder where the hell they live. You know, what do they do once they leave this very, very exclusive resort? So I decided to follow them one day. I went outside the gates of the compound, and I'm walking around, and all of a sudden I'm in another world. A third world, maybe even a fourth world in many respects. It's very poor. Maybe, again, I'll clarify that with poor in terms of money, they're poor. Not in spirit, they're wonderful people. But in terms of money, they don't have a heck of a lot. But, you know, their bellies are full because there's plenty of fish, there are plenty of chickens running around, there's lots of farming, so the fruit and vegetables are there. But the clothing, the clothing for the children, you know, a bit suspect. And this is the way they bathe. There's no water in the house, so the women have to go to a pipe, fill that thing up, put it on their head. Let me tell you something about that. I stopped to pick up a woman once. I had borrowed a car, and I saw her with a huge bundle on her back. I said, "Mommy, let me help you." She said, "Oh, my nickname down there is Tumperbee." She said, "Tumperbee," she said, "I'd be so grateful for your help." I said, "Great." I said, "Leave your bundle there, I'll put it in the car." So she gets in the car, I get out, I go to pick up the bundle, I couldn't pick it up. Now, I don't consider myself weak by any means. I couldn't pick this damn thing up. It was full of coconuts. So embarrassingly, I had to walk over to the car. I said, "Mommy, I can't pick it up." She said, "Oh, not to worry, Tumblebee." She comes over, picks it up like it was a toy, and puts it in the trunk of the car. Make a long story short, we drove her home. But my first day in the village is an old man on a donkey. And when you're old and black living in Antigua, you are anywhere between 80 and 180. I have no idea how old these people are. You know, because they're ragged and they're rough, and, you know, they've been in the sun all their lives, and their skins are tight. And I broke the first rule of photojournalism: steal a picture. I don't know why. I didn't want to steal this one. I didn't want to just click, got it, you know, the heck with you. I stopped and I asked him, I said, "Would you mind if I took your picture?" He said, "I know why you want my picture, because I am black and ugly." I said, "Okay, look, this is my first day in this village." I said, "I haven't been here before, and what I've seen so far, I like. You know, I'm very pleased with this place." I said, "And the one thing you're not going to do is keep me out of this village because you're one skin color and I'm another skin color. It has nothing to do with anything. Not a damn thing. Doesn't make me better or worse than you. As far as you being ugly, you got me there, man. You're the ugliest thing I've seen all day." I said, "That donkey you're riding on is better looking than you are." That was it. The Antiguan has a great sense of humor. He did. We had a great laugh, and for 35 years we were the best of friends in the whole world. I adore the guy, and he adores me, but he had to be set straight. There are 3 pictures here. And this is why you not only look at a picture, you look into a picture. You know, it's like, remember when you were diagramming a sentence and the teacher would say, "This is a subject, this is a predicate, and this is the adjective modifying the whatever." The main theme is this poor woman crushed by the death of her mother. But the thing that intrigues me most about this are the 2 people behind them. The older man, who realizes the grief of this situation, and the unbelieving of the child. To me, it's a very strong picture. And it's not a composite. It's something I saw in Hong Kong. It was this kid on a bus. They put a poster up on the bus. This is one of the few great things about California. There are not many as far as I'm concerned. I love, everybody has, you know, a Mercedes or a BMW, and they're all dark colored. And, you know, they give you this chance to, you know, photograph these beautiful things. Now, I'm not used to doing things. You're late. Where have you been? Boy, you're going to get a lousy grade for this course. Boy, oh boy. Do we know what his name is? Get his name. Textures, rhythms, you know, they're all there. You know, it's no different than music. There are textures in music, especially in jazz, and rhythms. You know, and what I could have done was to walk in front of the tree and just shoot the carts, but this made more sense. Fog. Fog's the greatest thing in the world. I give everything. If every day were foggy, it'd be beautiful for me. Because there's so much mystery in fog. So a friend of mine named Ed Peterson, I grew up with him. He's a former FBI agent. And he's got 5 kids, and they have 4 and 5 kids themselves. And when we all get together at Eddie's house, I've been documenting this family for 30 years, and eventually I'll hopefully find a publisher and do a thing called The Petersons. I know, don't ask me to explain it. He doesn't make any sense when I talk to him anyways. China. The thing I love most about the Chinese, you know, in New York City, every once in a while you may get yelled at for taking a picture. In China, nobody says a word. Nobody. See what I mean about that wide angle lens? You get real close, man. I mean, you know, one more arm's length and I'll be touching that guy's shoulder. And that's exactly where I want to be, because I'm putting you there. Not necessarily me so much, but I'm putting you, the viewer, in that scene. You know that big lens you got over there? That's the lens. It was taken in Notre Dame on Christmas Day, an altar boy, and I'm using the 20D, which I much rather have the 5D Mark III, but I'm using the 20D, so I'm limited. I got to go to 1600 for an ISO, and I'm shooting 2.8 at 125. But the key to pictures like this is, you know, that thing he's swinging with the incense in it, that's going to blur. So you have to wait until it reaches its apex. Once it gets to its apex, then you can fire. Because the 5 other shots that you took are all going to have a blur. They may be nice photos, but they're going to be distracting because of the blur. So you wait. And you shoot a lot, because you don't know if you're going to hit it every time. And you know, the background here was wonderful because it's almost a Renaissance painting. Italians like to do this. We like to photograph our food. This was at Steve Arcella's house. He says, calls me up and says, hey, we're having fried sardines. You want to come over? I says, yeah. I come over. I'm having a great time. And I look down at my plate. I said, God, this is better as a photograph than it is as a food. You don't see much color here. This is not Jay Mazel's show. This is my show. And this is Matt Firpo, who's the cinematographer or director of photography on David Shapiro and Anthony DiGiacomo's films. And I don't know, just a grab shot, and I liked it a lot. This is another thing California is good for, the beaches. At certain times of day, certain times of year, you get this big mess. You remember when this guy was here?
You mean the duck?
Yeah. I'm waiting at midnight, waiting for my son to get out of school. And I'm picking him up because the buses at the Port Authority will get him home at 3 o'clock in the morning. So the hell with that. And there's my camera. You know, it gives me a Hopper-esque kind of moment. Again, California, and you get all these wonderful patterns. I'd hate to see what Jay would do with this. A lot better than that. And this stuff you learn by looking at Jay's early stuff and Ernst Haas stuff when they were shooting Kodachrome and underexposing it by a stop, or maybe even 2 stops daringly, you know. And basically that's where I learned that from. Rather than just accepting the scene as the camera presents itself to you, say, what can I do to enhance this? And just knock it down a little bit. This is the best. There's a place called San Onofre in Southern California. And it's a great place for the surfers, because it's not just young surfers, it's old guys, young kids, and a whole range of people. And I loved it. And I just loved their whole lifestyle. Look at that old Volkswagen Beetle. You know, there's no pretense about these guys. They were wonderful. This is what I really like, is you got these 2 monsters. Look at the size of them. But look at how delicately the guy's grasping the other guy's hand, you know? You figure Guido and Nunzio, he had a, hey, give me a hand, will you? This is pure luck. After the Mermaids Parade, I'm walking back to my car, and the great thing, or not the great, I remember when Ed Koch was mayor, there was so many new buildings going up. I wrote him a letter, and I said, damn it, Mayor, stop the building. The city's down 1 stop. And that's the bad news. The good news is, when the light hits off these buildings, it starts bouncing all over the place. And every once in a while you run into a situation like that. And if you're ready and you're prepared, you know, you're going to be shooting. If you're carrying your camera with you, you'll get that. If you don't have your camera with you, you're going to resort to your cell phone like I have to. This was a graduation party. When my son graduated, they all went over to the friend's house. And after it was over, these swans attacked everybody, and they were all killed. And I was out of chips, so. This is what interests me more in the tennis match than the tennis. The tennis is relatively easy. You know, I've been doing it for, I don't know, 41, 42 years at the US Open and all over the world shooting tennis matches. Forehands, backhands. After a while, I don't mean this metaphorically, you can shoot tennis with your eyes closed. It's an easy sport. It's, you know, it's within certain parameters. It's not like football where it can go from the 30-yard line to the 20-yard line, and you have to be prepared for that distance. Tennis is played within the confines of the court. But this is what interests me more, is the human aspect of it. You know, there's a lot of money riding on this match. If he loses, you know, he's in trouble. You want to sum up New York in one photo? This is not Chicago or Santa Fe. Who knows who that is? Who is it? Very good, Chuckles. Yeah, but I knew you'd know it.
Who is it?
Rafa Nadal. Now, I don't understand why photographers don't do this. I have, for the last 20 years, showed up at the US Open during practice week. Now, I'm lucky. I have a badge that gets me in anywhere. And there are no photographers there. I'm the only one there. And I'm sitting right behind Nadal. These are pictures you don't get during a match. And that's what I want, is I want the unique photos. I mean, anybody can shoot Nadal. You get that lens, I'll sit you on the court, I'll give you 5 of these chips. Eventually you'll come up with a nice photograph. You're not going to miss. But this is the stuff that interests me a hell of a lot more. I don't know. Take your choice. Whoever you want to follow, it's up to you.
How old is that one?
71, 72. Kodachrome. Yeah, it's a good question, Jay.
You're my fucking neighbor.
Yeah. Lauren, you have my permission to hit you. Chiaroscuro. Anybody know what that word means? Except for Jay. Sorry? Who said that? Very good. Very good. Who invented it? Very good. Hey, hey! Oh! Hey! My next door neighbor is a hairdresser. She has a skylight in her place. I'm always in there kibitzing and fooling around and having fun. And all of a sudden, this woman comes in and starts talking to this other woman. I said, oh my God, look at that light. I mean, that's something Caravaggio would have set up. One of the Dutch masters. I run next door, I grab my camera, come in.
You didn't have your camera with you?
Well, let me answer that the way Jackie Gleason would have answered it. Now, if you're dumb enough to ride a roller coaster backwards, that's what it looks like. I gave Patrick Capone, the guy in the foreground, I gave him a camera with a wide-angle lens on it. I turned it around. I said, Patrick, when you hear me firing, you fire. That's all. You don't have to compose, nothing. It'll be a wide shot and I can crop or whatever. And I just wanted to get expressions of people on the roller coaster. They were not very happy to see me. This is the thing I love. There are 2 parades in New York City that if you haven't gone, you're missing something. The Mermaids Parade in Coney Island and the Easter Parade. And the Easter Parade, you know, you can get this shot with a 28. So you can imagine how close I am. And nobody complains, nobody says anything. Easter Parade. What a sweet face. You know, this one was a hard one, because the one benefit we have these days is that that camera can shoot color or black and white. You know, in the old days when Jay and I were shooting and Tony was shooting, you put in Tri-X, you were stuck with Tri-X. You put in Kodachrome, you were stuck with it. Unless you wanted to take it out and put something else in, but now I have this picture in color and it's every bit as sweet as this. This is on the way to the Isle of Skye in Scotland, and if you haven't been there, you're missing one of the glorious places to shoot. Again, down in Antigua, fortunately for the village, things have changed. They've gotten more affluent. The children no longer run around in bare feet and torn clothing, and they no longer cook in coal pots. This is my gallery, and I love photographing the the screen. I do it all the time because I put up different screensavers. And this is a friend of mine, Todd Shanklin's daughter, that I took, and I put all these little stickers on. Which one do you want to know?
Death is.
Oh, Death is an Angel by Baudelaire. It's a wonderful poem. There's another poem, if you can Google it, is Baudelaire talks about being drunk. And what he's saying is he wants you to become intoxicated with poetry, with life, with liquor, whatever you choose, but always be drunk. And read the poem. I'm paraphrasing it and doing a very bad job, but it's a wonderful, wonderful poem. Oh, there's another one back here up on the top. Walker Evans sums it up for all of us who are addicted to photography, and I use that term, addicted, advisedly, is that he said, stare, pry, eavesdrop. That's my rotten kid. And in the background is his tennis successes. But I'm going to get, here's a great lesson here. He was captain of his tennis team in high school for 2 years. And Martina Navratilova, a great tennis player, called me one day and said, I'd like you to come down to Florida and do a lifestyle shoot. You know, she said, I've got thousands of pictures, you know, playing tennis, but I want something of lifestyles. And I said, okay, great. So we worked out a deal. I said, look, just get me down there, put me up in one of your beach houses, and when we go out to dinner, you know, you pick up the check. Great. I said, no fee. I said, what I want you to do is hit with my kid for an hour, okay? That, to me, is worth all the money you could pay me, is that my son can say, I hit with the greatest woman tennis player of all time, right? She calls up a couple of months later, she says, I got a court at the Open. I go, whoa, I wasn't expecting the US Open. If you come out here, you know, we'll hit out in Old Japan or whatever. She gets a court at the Open. On one side is Justine Henin, who won the tournament the year before. The other side is Venus Williams. Anthony's in the middle with Martina. Now, he's not nervous because he's been photographed with McEnroe, Connors, you know, ever since he was that big. So he's used to all these celebrities. He's relaxed. And I told her, I said, look, he can't beat you, but he can hit with you. He can stay with you, and he's not going to embarrass you. So they're warming up. She hits a short ball. Anthony's relaxed. She takes it on 2 bounces, hits it back. She calls him up to the net. She goes, come here. He says, yes? What happened? He said, what do you mean? She said, you couldn't have gotten that on 1 bounce? That was the whole lesson right there. Bust your butt. Even in practice, you bust your butt. He looked at me. I said, don't look at me. I've been telling you that for years. Now maybe you'll listen. You know, and it's the same thing with photography. You don't do it just once in a while. You do it all the time. Edward Steichen said it best. Seeing needs practice. You want to play the piano? You got to practice. You want to play the saxophone? You got to practice. You want to paint? You got to practice. I mean, Matisse, on his deathbed, he's painting with a long stick on the walls. He's cutting out little pieces of paper. He can't stop. The same thing. Same thing with photography. Keep shooting. Oh, and by the way, this small picture, that was a picture Anthony took in Paris. And he's deadly. When I give him a camera, he is deadly. But he wants to make films and not stills. This is what I mean by going in the game. I go in the game with the kids. Same thing here, you know. These are strangers. I don't know who the hell they are. And I just walk up and, you know, lovingly, the Chinese accept you, and I just go in and start taking pictures. This is an interesting picture that needs a bit of explanation. Normally I wouldn't say anything, but to see a child asleep on a street in a public place in China, it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. And that's why this guy is so wary looking at this little boy. This is two members of the Chamber of Commerce in New York welcoming you to New York City. This is Harrington Park, a little discussion between father and son. This was on one of Anthony's productions. These are the Petersons, that friend of mine I told you about. And the kids just love the camera. Okay. I'm shooting a wedding 2 years ago, New Year's Eve. And I am whipped. It started at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's like 2 or 3 o'clock at night, or in the next morning. And I'm driving home. And this is what I mean by an addiction. I had to stop and take this picture. I mean, what was I going to do? Drive back to Jersey and say, God, that was a great picture. Why the hell didn't you shoot the damn thing? I get out of the car, I'm aching, grab a camera, go over and shoot it. I said, that'll be a Christmas card. But I did it 2 ways. I shot it in color, and I still don't know which I like better. I probably like the color better, to be honest with you, but that's what I saw originally, which attracted me. You know, I knew I'd convert it at some point to black and white, but I wanted this as a Christmas card. And it's one of those things that you can't pass it up. If you pass it up, all the way home you're going to be bugging yourself, geez, I should have taken that. This is a rare long lens shot. This was shot with your lens at the U.S. Open. It was during a rain delay. And you know, the thing that interests me most about this is the structure of this. Everything is so perfectly balanced. You know, the guy in the background is, you know, he's separate from the woman that's sitting down. Yeah, everything, you know, and everything from the guy in the foreground with the 2 kids to the wife to the guy behind it just brings you right back there. Then you're going to have the same thing I would have done as a kid, trying to catch seagulls with a blanket. You know. I live in a little tiny town called Harrington Park, and I'm going to go on record as saying this. I want you to record this. Someday, a president of the United States will have come from this little tiny town in Bergen County. There are only 5,000 people. His name is Cory Booker. He's the mayor of Newark. He went to the same high school my kids went to, same elementary schools. And a great guy, and someday he'll be president. Sorry, he's the mayor of Newark. It's in northern Bergen County. It's right next to the New York State border, between the Tappan Zee and George Washington Bridge. In a different time zone. Wait a minute.
What happened after that?
Yeah. What happened after that? I smacked Eric, the big one, and I said, leave him alone. Well, what did he do? First, I wanted to get the picture, of course. Of course. I would have liked it better had he hit him. Then I could have smacked him. This is a wet down. And what they do in New Jersey, I don't know if they do in civilized areas, but in New Jersey, when a small town, and there are a lot of small towns in New Jersey, gets a new fire engine, other towns come and baptize this thing. There's a whole ritual. And it is a baptismal because they come with their hoses and they're spraying everybody, and the hometown is squirting back at the other thing. And the guys who are having the most fun are the guys who are selling hot dogs and the kids. This is just pure absolute luck. This is not skill. This is what happens when you're prepared, though, is I'm shooting these guys, I'm following these guys, and all of a sudden this kid jumps in front and he makes the photograph. I love this. One of the greats, William Butler Yeats. This, again, this is the kind of thing I like best in the tennis. And I have a lot of leeway only because of my seniority that I'm allowed in the training room and the locker room. And you get some very interesting photographs there. And for me, the more people, the better. I don't want isolation. I want a lot of people. And then right away I go to an isolation photograph. Are you with him?
No.
Oh, okay. I'm shooting the Indy 500 for ABC. After the race is over, I'm walking back to my car, and there's this present waiting for me. This is, I love going into places like this. This is in the Isle of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides, you know. It's what I call natural light haven. You go into these barns and there's no light except what's coming in, and you know, it's just so wonderful. And the old peasants are fabulous. They all let you in there. This was taken in Italy.
Could you go back to that one more?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
What's the camera and lens on this one?
Sorry?
Camera and lens.
It's a 28, the Leica. Now, this is the end of a great era, 1980. All these piers are gone. Now, in those days, swimming in the river was a formal affair. So if you didn't have knee socks, black knee socks, you weren't allowed in. I love them. That was the great thing about them, is they represented such freedom. You know, it's not like going to a country club in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, you know, where everything is proper and all set up and very nice and very polite and very courteous. And you got these guys that just don't give a damn about anything except enjoying themselves on a hot summer day. Oh, this is better known as J. Mazel's Bed and Breakfast. Yes. Used to drive me crazy. When I was younger, I'd pick up the Daily News in the summer, and you'd see a picture of a bunch of kids, you know, opening fire hydrants and everybody running around. And there's Danny Farrell, a great New York photographer, or Barton Silverman from the Times. They all be standing there with their 180 or 300 on the, you know, safe sidewalk shooting this. I said, oh man, what the hell are you doing? The pictures are in the water. They're not out there, they're in the water. Go in the water. So I went in the water. Depends upon where you grew up, but I grew up like this and I loved it. You know, looking back, you know, we didn't have any fancy toys, but boy, we sure made up games. Remember when Harvey Stein said, "Don't be afraid"? Don't be afraid. Especially in this city. Don't be afraid. And I told you, you have the big advantage of being a woman. A woman's going to get away with a lot more than a man would. You know, I mentioned this in the last one, so Gene, if you're bored hearing this story, all right. Dorothea Lange, great photographer, born in Hoboken, New Jersey, along with Stieglitz, Hoboken, New Jersey. And she was asked about the Migrant Mother photograph, which I'm sure you've all seen, or if you haven't seen it, just Google the Migrant Mother and you'll see a woman, you know, in a distraught face with two children huddled around her. And she's looking off in the distance somewhere, and the camera is over here, you know, and shooting up at her. And someone asked her, how do you get that close to people without being noticed? She said, not smugly, but she was being curt. She said, I put on my cloak of invisibility. So I thought about that. And I said, well, let me see. I'm going to go down to Hoboken. My cousin Peter lives down in Hoboken. Chuck's kids live down in Hoboken. I went to a thrift shop in Hoboken. And I'm walking around and I looked in the back, and on a hook in the back was this cloak. But nobody saw it, except me. This was Dorothea Lange's cloak of invisibility. So I took it off the thing, put it on, and I walked out. Nobody saw it. He walked out. I didn't pay for it. That's how I get close. I put on my cloak of invisibility. So figure out for yourself where your cloak is and how you're going to wear it, and get close. I mean, how many times do you see kids doing this anymore in the inner city, playing in dirt with a little ball and just having fun, boys and girls together? Oh, I love this photograph. See the Empire State Building in the back there? Look at, they don't make them like that anymore. You know the thing about these people, they don't have a dime to their names. And the first thing they were doing is they were offering you a drink. You know? They're always so generous and so kind. Oh.
Yeah. Two frames or one?
Two frames. Now, you know, now we keep using these cameras at 3200 ASA and not expecting any grain. We want it clean and immaculate. Here I'm using a thing called recording film, which had an ASA of 1,000, and I'm pushing it to 4,000 because I want that grain. Okay, now, who said that?
The wheels broke.
That's the point. That's the key to the whole photograph. Today, you break a wheel, Ma, we got to go to Kmart and buy another thing.
Go with the broken one.
Those kids don't have any money. But the wheel is the key. You know, these are kids that can't throw it away. You can't throw it away. You throw it away, they got nothing to play with. So they play with it as it is. You know, and maybe some father will come by later in the afternoon after work and say, look, I'll take an old wheel off of something else and jury rig it and put it together. And that used to happen a lot. For me, the key to this whole picture is that figure way the hell off in the corner. Otherwise, it's nothing. This was another thing that I envied these kids for, because here they are swimming in the river, And what kind of backdrop is that? You know, New York skyline as a backdrop, these monstrous ships coming by, sailboats coming by. It was a great era. And that big silly dog is mine.
Guy with the socks.
He just wouldn't stay in the car. So I said, all right, come out. And he was friendly as hell, so. All right, this is a little spooky. Good friend of mine, Dick Drew, who works for AP. Dick took a picture during the towers burning of a guy jumping, and he was going down heads first. This prefigures that whole event for me. And one of these days I'm going to get that photograph from Dickie, and I'm just going to put them side by side. The kid with the hat is right out of a Cagney movie. He was wonderful. Real tough street kid. I just did a bar mitzvah, and this kid was a delight, you know. And he made the bar mitzvah for me with this wonderful photograph. This is back in Antigua, where every kid is an athlete. Look at the hands on the old man. You know what he did for a living all his life. Your father said this was the best photograph he'd seen in the last 25 years. He said that. And that was how many years ago? And I think he may be right still. I'll tell you what happened here. I'd been in the pool hall all day chatting with the guys, and I was just about to walk out, and somebody said something, and I turned around, and that's what I saw. And I slowly went for the camera. I didn't make a quick move. I slowly went for the camera, and I said, nobody is allowed to move. And I just took it real quickly, and I shot 3 frames. That's it. And they didn't move, fortunately. And that's it. Again, shooting my thing down at the bottom where it says Mabornin. That came from Clint Eastwood's movie where he kept calling the girl Mabornin. And my son didn't know what that meant. And he knows I listen to Celtic music. And I said, it's a term of endearment. It's like bubala, you know, in Yiddish, Mabornin.
Sundays with Jesus now?
My cousin James is a Jesuit up at Fordham. And you'll see on the bottom it says James DiGiacomo, S.J. I'll tell you one quick story about this. This is the kind of priest, if you went to Catholic school, this is the kind of priest you wanted. You never got, but you wanted this guy. I asked him about the Pope, you know, and let's face it, the Jesuits are very liberal, and they're thinkers. And I said, James, what about this new Pope? I said, you know, I said, he's either conservative or just old-fashioned. And he wrote back and he says, I've got more important things to worry about than the Pope. Like the Knicks, the Rangers, the Giants, and the Jets. And one day I asked him about the Chicago Cubs. He said, a Chicago Cubs fan. I said, do you think you're going to get a greater crown in heaven because you're a Cubs fan? He said, no, but it should knock off a few years in purgatory. This was taken during Mike DeVoe is a young filmmaker. He's a director, and this was one of the scenes. The one thing I like about these kids is they allow me to do anything I want. You know, if I were in LA, I'd have to join the union, and I'd have to have a blimp on my camera. I don't want to do either. So these young productions, they're going to give me the same thing, except they're not going to have Meryl Streep or Marlon Brando in them. But everything else is going to be interesting, and they let me shoot. And the thing I like about it is everything is lit for me. I know, one of the kids that you saw before wanted to take that picture, and I love the whole thing. See why you got to go to the Mermaids Parade? And it's a literate parade because they only read the New York Times in the art section. I used to go to Russia every year for a tennis tournament for 9 years. And every year I'd go visit this little girl's grave. It just haunted me, the fact that she was so young and she died so young, and she was so pretty. Right after Glasnost, 1991, we could shoot anything. I was there in 72, and I got a list of don'ts this long. Don't do this, don't do that, don't go here, don't go there. Now, you can do anything you want. And it was really quite a luxury for a journalist. So, I can remember I was following these 4 kids. They were all in uniform. They had these strange uniforms. And I know all the young kids in Russia speak English, right? So, I walked up to one of them, I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "We're going to parade." I said, "Oh, okay, great." I said, what are the uniforms?" They go, "We are monarchists." I said, "Monarchists? Oh, you mean you want to go back to the Tsar's days?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, what a stunning idea. I don't know why I didn't think of it. You can all go back to being peasants again." Oh, what a terrific idea. Silly kids. I have no idea what this says, but it just, that woman's looking right at the back of my head. Well, this guy was not too thrilled with being photographed, but I knew I could outrun him, so I took it. I don't know. I don't know if there's any symbolism in here or not, but.
Where's his head?
Sorry?
Where's his head?
Oh, it's under the blanket. You know how much money I made on this photograph at the Image Bank? I'm telling you, I don't know why, but it sold like crazy. You know, for me, what's so interesting is the difference of the shadow and the subject. They're 2 different forms. Michael Spano's wife, Gabriella, said, "You should have been born back in the 40s. There's another thing they don't do anymore, Chuck. Street hockey. You know, everything was taped up with gaffer's tape. This is my homage to Gary Winogrand. I didn't take it. Anthony did. I gave him a camera. Again, he was going in to see the Coen brothers with his mother. So he took the little Canon G9. I said, "Take it. Take it, damn it." So he took it. On the way back, it's raining. He shot this through the window of the car. I said, "Man, if you were born in the 40s and living in Paris, Man Ray would have hailed you as a surrealist." I love the photograph. We used to do that. I'm amazed they came out of my neighborhood with any lips.
Look at the kid later.
Yeah, the kid on the left. Kid on the left. I don't caption photographs because if I do, then I'm robbing you of interpretation. But this one I caption, and it's called "Only the Holy Ghost Cares." See what happens when you bring your camera even to kids' plays? My kids play. What am I going to see there? Who knows, right? This guy came up with it. Truth. I didn't set it up. It's there, out where my sister lives. I get stoned just looking at this. Now that marijuana's still legal. And this fascinates me, is that Paul Newman is on 5,000 bottles. You know, Walker Evans did not something like this, but when he photographed the photo booth with all the little pictures in it, that has always been in the back of my mind. You see things like that. This was in Paris. Paris again. Where else? Obviously Italians.
Yeah.
We don't want to miss this, Chuck. This was in Ragusa, Sicily. This was her first communion picture, and I said to her, I said, Samantha, I said, where's that mask that you had, you know, in the other room? She said, it's in there. I said, get it, put it on, and that's how that came about. Now, look at this picture. There are three things going on here, and they're totally different. I don't know what the lineswoman is looking at. The kid's looking at the ball, and the player's missed it completely. And he's in midair. I don't do this often. I don't like doing it. But once in a while I do it, and for some reason I like it. I solarize this for no other reason. Windows, reflections. The same thing that Anthony did. Here's a situation down in the village. I saw all these wonderful things there, and I'm saying this would make a great photograph, but I mean, anybody can do that. I had to wait for something to happen, and this guy made it happen. Obviously Italians. You can tell by the hair on the woman's leg in the back. Sorry, mother. On the way to the Isle of Skye. You know, I love journey photographs. They're hard to take, but you saw that. Yeah, there's another one from that same series. The Italians love doing this. They love making these wonderful statues, and they put them on these big, huge things, and they carry them through the streets, you know, and the only ones that really go to Mass are the women. The men never go. And the men love carrying these things. Here's a photograph. Remember we talked before, we never know what's going to happen in New York. If you go to interrupt the fight and the guy pulls out a gun and shoots you. I took this photograph, you know, you're taking your life in your hands. I don't know if this guy's going to shoot me or not. This is not the kind of photograph he wants taken, obviously. These are all Stonehenge. Again, I have two frames of this. One frame, there's no shadow. This frame, there's a shadow. This frame makes it. The other one, you just look at it and you go, oh, it's a woman on a train. But now, there's that one thing you say, what the heck's going on there? $1970, down the Bowery. Now, if I were Jay, I would have shot this in color, and it would have been a hell of a photograph. This was at the U.S. Open, and I found this woman staring. So I had to take the shot. Again, I don't know if this guy's going to pull out a knife and kill me. This in Hong Kong on a bus. And the guy could look right through me. I wish my son would have been there. I would have signed this kid up as an actor. Look at that face. There's my son. And I don't know why I think of it this way. You may not think of it this way. But remember Robert Capra's photograph of the Spanish soldier getting shot and he's falling back? It's kind of the same thing where I caught Anthony in mid-roll. He's just falling down. And it's a grab shot. You don't sit there and compose it. You bring it up and you shoot and you fire and you hope you got it. This was at Anthony's graduation and I have no idea what's going on here. Same thing. Anytime I can get a plastic fork in my photographs, I'm happy. This is one of those Rotten Peterson kids whom I adore. Her name is Nora. And I don't usually do this. I don't usually slow the shutter speed down. But I wanted to add some impact to this, and I did. It seems to work. One was in color, the other's in black and white. He's in black and white again. They really know how to relax down in Antigua, Just find an old beat-up car. Here's the guilty one right here. Another guilty one. These are all cell phones, for whatever they're worth. Cell phone at the U.S. Open. Cell phone right after Mass. I get up every morning and I go in the bathroom and I see more shadows and shapes. And I go, God, I got to shoot that. This was during the hurricane. I went up to the ShopRite to get some stuff, and I didn't have a camera, so I took out the cell phone and shot this. Oh, God, my son drives me crazy. I spent 45 minutes shooting this. My wife said, don't forget to do the dishes before you leave. I said, okay. So I poured it in an orange juice and put it down. I said, oh, my God, look at that. So I got out my cell phone, and for 45 minutes, I shot this thing from 35 different angles. You remember, it doesn't exist in one photograph. You don't know where it exists, so shoot a lot. Cell phone. I took this back in 1948, I think. Cell phone. Cell phone. Now this, Ken Horowitz, who owns a lab in New York City, a great printer, he made me a 14 by 14. I didn't think it would hold up that well, but it did, and it was magnificent. Jersey City, remember those piers where the kids were swimming? That's what's there now, a Hyatt. Cell phone.
Really?
Cell phone.
How did you get that shape?
Move the camera.
No. I mean, the format looks different.
What's the, oh yeah, well there are different apps.
Oh,
So you select the app, you think it'll work on a certain situation. I was just tired of going to the U.S. Open for 41 years, shooting the same thing. I said, I got to do something different. So I decided to do a little photo essay, And this is all the stuff from the U.S. Open. I love this. Nobody else understands it, but I don't know why I love it. Again, these are all with the cell phone, you know, and they're just things you pass every day. This is somebody's light on their car. That's my chubby kid. There's another one. Diana says, do the dishes before you leave. I go, I ain't doing them until I photograph them. You know, and then you spend 45 minutes when you could be at work answering phone calls. You know, but how can you resist all those shapes and shadows and textures? There's another wrap. And it, you know, it kind of multiplies things. Halloween. Now, here's something I know I can get arrested for, but I love W Magazine. And I photograph the pages in W Magazine. And that's what happens when you use a certain app. And this is W Magazine. I wonder if W would even like this stuff.
What's the app?
You would ask that. It is on the FX camera. This is the Droid. I don't know if it's on the iPhones or anything. It's just an FX camera. And what it does is it mirrors things and gives you all different kind of crazy things. But this stuff, you know, this stuff goes way back to the Bauhaus and the crazy things they were doing there. Look at that. This is all from a magazine. Now, I don't know if it's fine art. I don't give a damn. It's a lot of fun, and it's great pleasure, and it relieves tension, and I don't know what the hell else I can say about it. It's just that, you know, it's a lot of fun to play like this. If somebody decides this is fine art 50 years from now, God bless them. Right now, I'm just enjoying it. And the other thing is that I really like about it is I'd love to be a designer, but I can't draw to save my life. This now I can design. Look at that. My house, you know, my sink. My sink again. My sink in black and white. That's my iron, and I love the fact that it comes out looking like a heart in the rest of the house. There it is there, just as a structure. My spectacular daughter. California, all cell phones. Ooh, God. This one I really admire. This works. See, and the different edges suggest different apps. This guy's, I don't know, I love him and hate him at the same time. I love the fact that he has enough nerve to cover his entire body with all this stuff. But I also think he's out of his mind. He's got Benjamin Franklin on one cheek and Abraham Lincoln on the other, In God We Trust, and dollar bills. Unbelievable. These I love doing down in Antigua because the light is always so right. This was at the U.S. Open. Kids in the neighborhood. Oh, sorry. God, look how thin I was. Chuck, what time is it? What time? Oh, okay. All right, I'm going to leave some time for questioning. That's serious business, that stuff. Here's another, Anthony took the original photo of this, but I told him, I said it needed something. It just didn't have enough, so I solarized it. And that gave it some dimension and effect. When I'm at my sister's house, I get bored to tears out there because there's nothing to do. So I go in her pool and I photograph all the debris that's in the pool. Hey, hey. Any idea what this guy's name is? Don't say Salvatore, because you'd be right. You know, Coney Island. I mean, who the hell else would do something like that? But he was a great guy. He didn't mind being photographed. This is the Mermaids Parade, where you get all these wonderful photographs. Mermaids Parade. Guy put his father on the thing. This is in my sister's pool. And I just love the tones and textures you get. I give up. Why? There's nothing like a tattoo convention, Chuck. If you see one in Jersey up in Secaucus, go to it. They're all so narcissistic. You're not going to have any trouble asking them for a photograph. Oh, this guy I love. Look at the implants. Now, this is the old tattooing come from the Philippines, where they tap the ink. Hawaiian, yeah, Samoa. For me, the one who makes it is the woman in the back. I'm not interested in the foreground so much. This guy, he's got Joe Frazier all over his body.
Is this recent?
Sorry?
Is this recent? These?
Some are from this year and some are from last year. Yeah. Well, let me go back to that. I love all the things that are going on, and I always forget the guy way in the back, you know. Guy takes his mother's picture and puts it on his arm. Oh, that's magnificent, isn't it? It makes a great photograph. The Bride of Frankenstein. Honolulu, baby. That is fascinating, though, Jay. You got to admit, you would love it.
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, like shooting fish on a barrel.
Yeah, it is. You know, what also amazes me is what really fine artists these tattoo guys are. I mean, they can draw. This was perfect. This was at the Mermaids Parade. You know what I especially like about this photograph is the guy's shadow. You know, the shape is so wonderful, and then that damn belly. And then there's, what's his name, who passed away, unfortunately, Keith Haring. That's something special, isn't it? My favorite. Pops and cuz. You know, and there's a guy you don't want to make fun of. Look at the size of that bicep, you know?
I thought it was fine.
I couldn't figure that out either.
Again, a reflection in a window of the woman next door to me in the beauty parlor. Don't make fun of them, they're Sicilians. I'm not here to get your sympathies, but this is a difficult shot. In Moscow, the subways, the escalators go straight down practically, right? So you got one escalator going down and one going up. They're going up, I'm going down, and I'm indoors, and I'm shooting at a 15th of a second. How the hell am I going to get this? Because we're moving, and you just have to pan real slowly and steadily, take a deep breath, and hopefully you'll get it. Gypsies. Yeah, you saw him before. Reminds me of Roy Decarava's photograph with the man with the briefcase behind his back. Same thing. That kept me alive at the Image Bank. Oh my God. There's an Irish group called the Dropkick Murphys. This is on the cover of one of their albums.
Wow.
And they're Irish, and this was taken in Venice. Weddings, I do a lot of them. I did Laura's sister's wedding.
No pictures of it then.
This is it, 1969, first time I ever had a camera in my hand. I'm shooting from my car, and you can tell because my aerial from the car is sticking out. This is the old Volkswagen, the aerial was bent. And if you listen to John's song, you can hear in the background, "War is over if you want it." It's in the back of his Christmas song. So whenever you hear that, that's it. Now, let me ask if there are any questions, and I don't want any from you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to know, when you are taking pictures of somebody posing, what is your interaction with that? Do you go with the flow, you tell them to do something, you got inspired by it? I don't know.
You're you, and they're them. And you have to find your own invisible cloak.
So it goes with the moment. So
You have to be you. There's no acting, there's no pretense. You have to be honest and explain what you're doing and why you're doing it and how long it's going to take. And depending upon the individual, you got to remember the individual has got to have some respect. You know, I may pick these two guys and they're going to be two totally different personalities, and I got to treat them differently perhaps. So you're not only a photographer, any photographer will tell you in those situations, you're also a psychologist. There you go. It helps if you don't speak Spanish, though.
depends where you are.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I bring Tony with me. We go down to Cuba. Yes, sir.
How did you get into photography?
You've heard this story, haven't you? I was working for CBS. I was a production supervisor. I was offered a job to produce the preseason Giant football games, 5 games. I was working for 60 Minutes. And I had come from being kicked out of school for the 90th time with no academic background. I had nothing to fall back on outside of the fact that I used to work on a moving van. So I wanted to stay with 60 Minutes because I was learning. It was a great opportunity to learn. And I'm working with Don Hewitt, who's just the world's greatest newsman. And I was offered a job to produce the Giant games. I turned it down. I recommended a guy I'd known since we were in the mailroom. I'm very competitive, and I recommended him. He got the job. He used to photograph the football practices. I was playing football on weekends, so I used to criticize his photographs. I said, "They stink. What the hell do you know about football, et cetera?" Yeah, if you're so good, get a camera. Oh, really? That was it. It was on a dare. That
Want to hear my story?
Yeah.
I came to photograph CBS.
Oh, yes.
You were there.
Yes.
And you found out how much money I made. And you said, if that schmuck can make that much money, I'm going to become a photographer.
Is that true?
And then you showed me your
Part of it,
portfolio.
yes. Oh, no, no. Here's the thing, the portfolio, okay? Because I have it written down here of things to mention. One is bring up Maisel, okay? I called him. This was after I had left CBS, after I had taken him around CBS to complete his assignment on an annual report. So I hadn't seen him for like 2 years. I was in England photographing rugby, photographing and playing. So I come back, I've got these big R prints, 16 by 20 R prints. Cost me a fortune. It was all the money I had in the world. Somebody had looked at him and said, why don't you bring him to MoMA? Okay, what's MoMA? So I found out, I went up, I left him there, came back the next day, and the guy said, John Sarkowski would like to take 4 of these for their permanent collection. I said, yeah, fine, help yourself. He said, can you give me a dye transfer? I didn't know what a dye transfer was. So I said, I don't think so. So he goes, well, that's all right. So I didn't want to be a schmuck, right? I should have asked you first. So he did that. So then I said, well, let me call Jay. See what I said, you know, you remember me? He says, how can I remember you? You cost me an annual report. I said, what do you mean I cost you? Yeah, with all the jokes you were telling for a whole week. All we did was clown around, admittedly, all right? I mean, he did his job, but, you know, we talked about Laurel and Hardy, the Marx Brothers, and everything else that had nothing to do with photography. And he says, what are you doing now? I said, well, I picked up a camera and I'm taking pictures. He goes, just what I need, another blankety-blank competition. I said, no, I'm not competitioning you. I said, I like black and white better than color anyway. So he says, all right, come on down. So I went down. I had all these pictures, maybe 30 pictures in a big box. Put them down. He went through them deliberately, looking at them. When he was all finished, he said, I'm going to do it again. Takes them back, looking at them. Takes one, and he rips it in half. I go, wow. I go, was that bad? He said,
And I ripped it in quarters.
you ripped it in little pieces, to be honest with you. He said, so I said, was it that bad? He said, you have everything in here from the banal to the brilliant. I'm showing you how to edit. He said, you won't do it because you're in love with everything. And he was right. I was in love with everything I did. This was brand new. This was alchemy. I'm pushing a button and something comes out. Come on. I mean, that's magic. Let's face it.
So you still don't remember what I told you?
What else did you tell me?
I said you have a lot of great pictures in that portfolio. This is not one of them.
Oh, yeah.
You have to know the difference.
Yes,
Because otherwise, you'll be judged by the worst thing in your portfolio.
absolutely.
And you have to keep taking out the worst.
Are you writing this down? Because I want to remember this.
You didn't remember last time. Why would you remember that?
If you had listened, you could have had a career.
For 35 years, he's been abusing me. 40.
He came over to my place, and he walked out, and as he left, he turned to the right, and he took a picture for which I have hated him forever, because I never saw that picture. It was a revelation. He's got an incredible eye. Unfortunately, the mouth comes with it.
Edit that. Oh, God, that's funny. What I want to do is I want to go back to Italy. My father died when I was 4, so I really never knew him. I want to go back to start in Sicily, where he was born, and do a thing called Faces of My Forefathers. Because I drove once from Palermo to Venice. And that, for me, and I know I'm biased, but that was one of the most incredible trips I've ever been on. It was marvelous. It beat Route 66 by a mile. But lots of fun, and Eventually, I'll do that and I'll bring my son with me because he's going to document the whole thing. All right. Any questions? You're going to really get yelled at for not bringing your camera. You know, you should be ashamed. You feel thoroughly ashamed of yourself? No. All right.
Show him your cell phone.
Wait a second. But you know what he said once? Now, I know I'm going to paraphrase this a bit. You're going to appreciate this. When Linda was in the house.
Your Linda or mine?
Your Linda. Mine's Diana, yours is Linda. She's on the bed and she's got the baby on her lap and he's moping around. And she says, "What's the matter?" He goes, "You're not meeting my needs." "Oh, really? What are your needs?" "Next time you do something with the baby, do it in good light." Now, only photographers think like that. Boy, that is great. If I opened up 2 stops, it'd probably even be better. I wish LA were here. She would have enjoyed this whole thing.
Yeah.
Anything. David,
It's all gonna bring an extra microphone up.
any questions?
Yeah.
Sir,
You said to use an F2 lens calculator.
say again, please.
You said that you should use an F2 lens.
F2.
Could you just use a higher ISO with a smaller aperture?
Yeah, but then it's going to get grainier.
So,
I understand that, but that's the nice thing about these new cameras, and the same goes for Jay's Nikon. You go higher in the ISO, you really don't get grainier. They're really marvelous. So it depends. You know, if you don't mind the grain, then go up.
I see. Okay.
Because let's face it, I'm in 2 worlds here, and 2 worlds. Someday I'm going to do a book, 2 worlds, film and digital, because they're 2 different worlds. I thought one went, what?
They're no different.
Why are they no different?
They're different in technical things.
Okay, keep talking while I photograph.
Not in terms of content, they're different in form. Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
What do you hope for when you go out to shoot? Or do you ever go out to shoot?
No, I just go out. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
But what do you hope for?
I really don't hope for anything. I just want to be aware, and I'll give you the answer to that.
This
What-
is the best thing. What he just said is so good.
One of the students in one of these classes said, "How do I know I want to be a photographer?" I said, "Well, that's easy." I said, "When you get up in the morning and you go to the window and you're looking out the window, and somebody in the room says, you know, what's it like outside? You turn around, you give them one answer, and only one answer. It's F8 at 250. That's it. You give them any other answer. Become an electrician, become a plumber, get a real job, get an honest job. But I'm already looking for light. When I told you this before, you know, there are times I get up in the morning, I go in the bathroom, and we have shutters on the window, and when a light comes in, it hits the bathtub, and there are all these patterns there. You go, oh, damn it, I got to go back and get the camera. And, you know, I got to shoot it.
Left the camera?
Well, no, I leave it at my gallery, so I go in and get my cell phone, and I take it with the cell phone. And depending upon the app, you get some nice pictures. The thing that I think is important for street photography is find out what's going on. Pick up the New York Times, pick up the New York Times and see what's going on. Okay, there's a festival, a flower festival going on up and down in Soho. Great, I'm going to be there because people will be there. It's all about people for me. I don't care about the flowers. I want to go where the people are. So I'm going to look in the New York Times and find it. One of the things I find terribly exciting is that West Side, well, besides the High Line, that road that goes all the way the heck down to the World Trade Center, everything is on there. People jogging, people walking with dogs, mothers with carriages, you know, inline roller skates. There is so much activity down there, and it's just standing there saying, somebody take my picture, you know, and you can shoot like mad, pretty much with impunity. Nobody's going to say anything because most photographers are inured with that anyway. So go to where the action is. You know, yes, ma'am.
Do you do any or very much editing, post-shooting, any at all?
Post-shooting?
Yeah.
Like mad.
You do?
Because of him.
What?
Yes. Because after the editing, afterwards.
Editing, but not
Yes.
manipulation.
No. Well,
That's what she's asking. That's what she's asking.
manipulation. It depends upon what you call manipulation.
Enhancement.
It depends upon what you call manipulation. If you call dodging and burning manipulation, I dodge and burn all the time.
Digitally, I'm asking.
I do it digitally. I do the same things I would have done in the darkroom.
Do you use Lightroom or
No, I use Photoshop.
any plugins? Any?
I have CS6 right now. I have to have CS6 because the Mark III says you have to have CS6. I didn't want to, but I had to get it. There was a great line by Joseph Karsh when Anna Magnani was being photographed, and Karsh said, "My camera is very exact. It sees everything." And she said, "I don't want you to touch up one wrinkle. I've suffered too much to get them." Great line. Only by an Italian would come out with something that melodramatic. Well, listen, thank you all for coming. Thank you.
For more information, please visit us online, give us a call, or stop by our New York City Superstore. You can also connect with us on the web.